Hello, everyone. I'm Denzel Snipes, and this is Sean Russi over here to my right. And welcome to another episode of Sports Business Insider, your inside track to anything money related, business related in the world of sports. And we have got a great show for you. Before we get started, just want to let everybody know that if you are following, checking us out on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, or LinkedIn, to go ahead and hit that follow and subscribe button, and also give a look at some of our other shows as well. Sideline Sports Show. We had an awesome episode just last night, but it's Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Sideline Sports Network. That is with JB Ellis, myself as a producer, Dave DeRocher, John Shear, and as well as Rafael Esparza. Top Rope Talk Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Sideline Sports Network. That's with myself and the wrestling professor himself, Billy Cruz. Find our group, Wrestling Discussions, on Facebook. Go ahead and give a request to join. We'll go ahead and bring you in and indoctrinate you into some of the world of professional wrestling. You also got Hawk Talk with Dave DeRocher and the Legion of Boom's own Walter Thurman III, Tuesdays at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time on the Sideline Sports Network. And of course, you got the Gauntlet, which is on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Sideline Sports Network. Now, that's our normal time that we go on. We are actually on a bit of a break until August. NFL news kind of slow right now. But as soon as training camp, preseason comes along, Hall of Fame game, we'll be right back on the air. But you can follow, or you can subscribe to myself at Denzel Snipes 13 on YouTube and James Tatum 12 on YouTube as well. Go back and check out some of our old episodes and kind of get a feel for the program. So with that being said, Sean, how you doing, my boy?
Hey, what's going on, boss? Everything's good.
Doing pretty good, man. So we're gonna go ahead and get into today's discussion. And as everyone can see, Justin Jefferson got the bag. He got the bag, and now it's about. So the talk was whether it was deserved or not, or anything like that. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for the business aspect of it. Those of y'all who don't know, the Vikings extended wide receiver Justin Jefferson to a 4-year, $140 million deal, 110 mil guaranteed, 88.7 signing bonus. He's the highest paid non-quarterback in history. Now I'll ask this much as well. I'm gonna pass off to Sean, and I'm gonna ask this question, and then we'll get off into like the business details per the notes and everything. First, let's address, has the market risen for other receivers? Now you got to think CD is got to get paid. Jamar Chase has got to get paid. And they're thinking, hey, I know I'm better than that guy. So has the market risen for other wide receivers? And then after you answer, if you want to go into your details about the contract, of course, more than welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one with CD is interesting. Because obviously all of these three guys have had solid quarterbacks throwing to them, but I think CD. I don't know if he would top Jefferson's number, just based on what Jefferson's been doing the last 4 years consistently. Jamar Chase, I could see getting equal or maybe if he depending what he does this season, getting a little bit more. I think the eye popping thing for me is the guaranteed money in this, even compared to the most recent AJ Brown deal. And AJ Brown was the highest paid non QB for about 2 months.
Yeah.
And that's something we talked about right now. Now everybody resets the market. Now Justin Jefferson's reset the wide receiver market. But it doesn't happen with every player. Amon Brown got his contract. Collins got his contract. Jalen Waddle got his contract. A lot of these guys, but those guys didn't reset the wide receiver market the way AJ Brown did, and now Justin Jefferson.
Yep. Now
And the
also Tyreek
guarantees
Hill.
in his contract, I think, are just record setting and good to his agent. For getting basically majority of this contract is guaranteed.
Yep. Vast majority of his contract guaranteed. Once again, 88.7 at signing bonus at the time of signing. 110 mil guaranteed. He's going to average 30 million a year annually. And this part right here really stood out to me. And I know people see the money and everything, but keep in mind he'll only be 29 at the end of that contract. And if he stays healthy and putting up this production, he may as well be 26.
Yeah, no, and that and it's kind of similar to what we talked about last week with Purdy's potential 4 year deal is he would only be 28, 29 at an end of a 4 year contract. And now Jefferson again, like you said, if he stays healthy, the production stays. Now he may have a bit of a down year for him based on what's going on in quarterback in Minnesota this year. Sam Darnold seems to be going to be taking the reins there temporarily. Um, and we'll see how that works out. Jefferson will probably still put up, his similar stats, but he could take a bit of a hit the way Devontae took a hit with Garoppolo last year.
Yeah.
When that wasn't on Devontae, we know Garoppolo was a major drop at quarterback from what Devontae was used to from, Rodgers and then Carr, who was also a gunslinger compared to Garoppolo.
Right.
So yeah, he could set himself up real nicely to again maybe obviously if he stays healthy like you said, puts up the stats, reset the market again at 29. He can do another 4 year deal if he wants, and be 33 years old. If that's when he wants to call it a career.
Do you
But I
think he
think
would
that's
still
something
get?
we're seeing now. Unlike Pat Mahomes, who signed a 10 year deal, you're seeing a lot of these 4 or 5 year deals, extensions that keep guys right around 28, 29, 30 when they're about to come up on their next contract. And
Yeah.
that I think is a lot smarter than signing a longer term deal than say you sign 7 years and then you're 32 at the end of the contract. And then there's a different conversation about are we signing a 1 or 2 year deal? How much have you fallen off? What is your speed like at 32? And the conversation's a whole lot different than being at 29.
I said the same thing about DeAndre Hopkins, and I think it was about a year or two ago. I said the same thing about DeAndre Hopkins, and I was like, "Listen, DeAndre Hopkins is still productive. At the end of the day, he's 32 years old. He's not 23." And so before they sign someone who's 31 or 32 with a slight injury history to another big deal, one question they have to ask themselves is how much more of this production is ahead of them versus back
Yep.
when you were 23. Okay, Justin Jefferson, right? So he's 25. So when they signed this deal, when they offered him this deal, right? They were like, okay, the production that he's put up, he's got more of this ahead of him versus when he's 30, 31, and it's like, how much more does he have ahead of him? That's not to sit here and say that he can't put up 1,000 yards at age 30. He absolutely can, but how many more times is it going to happen? Whereas when you're 23 years old, it's like, oh man, I can see this for the next 4 seasons.
No, and it's funny how the NFL looks at 29 versus 30 as a whole lot differently. 30 is like that nightmare number all of a sudden for for a lot of teams. Like, oh, we got to start making decisions. He's aging unless he's a potential Hall of Famer. 30 is that witching year for a lot of players in terms of can I get another 1 year deal next year? Can I get another 1 year deal? How long can I keep getting these 1 year deals? So getting out at 29, if he's healthy, yeah, you could see another long contract, and then maybe that's his last one at that point if that contract takes him to 33, 34 years old.
Yep.
In terms of the market, I don't know if the next contracts we see beat him. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is on everybody's mind, and we'll touch on that a bit more in a little bit later. But CD, like you mentioned, is probably going to get something similar. I don't think he's going to exceed Jefferson's contract if he signs it, this offseason. Let's say he goes out and has a monster year, then maybe next season when the cap has another increase and there's an argument to have him reset the market and become the highest paid for a couple months, you could see that. I don't think you're going to see T. Higgins get in that range. T. Higgins will probably be somewhere a little above St. Brown, but in that Jalen Waddle type guaranteed area, 50 million, something in that, general area, I think. But Ayuk is interesting, right? Because he had a big year. He's a breakout player, but he doesn't have the 4 solid years that Jefferson has. But obviously, last year, based on his last 2 years, based on his his compatibility with Purdy, there's an argument to be made that he's obviously as valuable, or at least in the Niners roster and cap space wise, the 28 million they're handing Samuel, more valuable than that 28 million that they're giving to Deebo Samuel.
True. And you know what? Speaking of 49ers, that leads us to our next guy. So Christian McCaffrey just recently signed a 2-year, $38 million extension. So your thoughts about that? Because this was a guy who has an injury history. However, the 49ers have enough faith in him to stay healthy and be productive. Because, well, let's face it, the last 2 years he been with San Fran, well, he he's been healthy, and we've seen what a healthy Christian McCaffrey can do. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, and I think a lot goes to the to the 49ers training room. Every NFL team goes out and hires their own trainers. I think you see things in Carolina go a little bit differently with injuries. I think the Niners have different programs in place where they understand how to not overwork injured guys during this time, during the preseason. They've handled McCaffrey very well. I think they've pulled him out of games where they no longer need to use him. I think they've spelled him at time with Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell very well to kind of ease off that injury. But he has missed, I think, 3 to 4 games since being with the 49ers since week 5 of the previous season, when they traded for him right before that famous game with the Chiefs, where he had an awesome game, but the Niners lost by a couple points in that regular season. Um, but I think what you see with McCaffrey is, and it was a quiet holdout, right? He didn't show up to voluntary camps. No one really was talking like, oh, he's looking for a contract. But here we are, surprisingly, right after Justin Jefferson. Oh, now Christian McCaffrey is now the highest paid running back. But quietly, I think you would have seen McCaffrey miss Monday if this contract wasn't signed. Um,
Yeah.
he deserves the raise. He's a wide receiver and running back, obviously, for the most part. He's a dual weapon. I think he's really replaced what Deebo Samuel does for the 49ers over the last 2 seasons. McCaffrey's receptions are about where they were with the Panthers, a little bit lower, but not much. His usage on the ground is about the same. And I think when his PFF grade is at the running back position, the only one to grade over 92 receiving and rushing.
That's
So I think
nasty.
the money's well earned. And if you look at the next guy that's second on the list, who's Alvin Kamara, who was highest paid annually up until this
Hmm.
deal, Kamara's got as much of an injury history, and you can argue, obviously, based on recent production, McCaffrey definitely deserved the raise.
It does. Barkley is getting, what, 15 million annually?
Yeah, he's getting 15. Taylor Jacobs are the only ones other get or are also getting over 10. The only other running backs getting over 10 million. Um, I think this resets the running back market a little bit for pass catchers and for dual running backs. I don't think it does much for the pure rushers. Still, I still think they're still going to get the short end of the stick the way we've been seeing. But these
Yeah.
dual threat running backs that are coming out now, that we've been seeing more and more use of, especially in the high powered offenses like the Chiefs, like the 49ers,
Hmm.
even the Bills, who have done it with less known running backs, but they're another one that likes to use the running backs out of the backfield a lot of passing downs. I think you're going to see the dual running back market is going to be reset here.
Yeah. And which is crazy because you wish it kind of would have happened with Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh. He stayed healthy. He's a dual threat running back. How come he couldn't just get his money?
Yeah, and you figure there was a little more drama there, and they had a different salary cap situation going on. But I think a lot speaks to Le'Veon Bell's off the field in terms of what
Right.
probably played out in the negotiation rooms in Pittsburgh compared to blue collar, clean Christian McCaffrey, who to this day has not yet had an off the field issue.
All right. So, final question before we close out. What running back do you think would be next on the books? Because, see, we talked about the market rising for other receivers like, CD Lamb, Jamar Chase. We talked about the running backs getting paid right now. Which running back do you think would be next up that the market could arise for?
The running back market, I think, is the toughest to gauge year in and year out because the amount not only of running backs that go through the NFL, but because if you look at the starters week 1 and then you look at the starters week 18 on NFL teams, mostly other than McCaffrey last year and a handful of other guys, not a whole lot of the guys that started week 1 were starting week 18 due to injuries. Running backs, unfortunately, a lot, and you see it in the Niners system. Other than McCaffrey for the past decade, they've really just gone by committee, and a
Yeah.
lot of teams go by committee. And I think it makes it hard to kind of determine who could be next up without a kind of breakup season. But Travis Etienne in Jacksonville, who's probably coming up close here in a year or two, is someone that
Hmm.
comes to mind based on his production. But it's definitely a difficult market to put a grasp on, other than those guys who are really like McCaffrey, big production guys, almost as big production as the quarterback of the team because of how much he's got the ball in his hands.
Hmm. What about for a guy like, say, David Montgomery?
I think it's tough because now you got Jameer Gibbs who substitutes for him on passing downs. So I think that then makes the argument for Detroit. Well, you're a two down back for us. And I think Jameer Gibbs is a budding superstar in this league. His size doesn't play to a wear and tear back, so I think you need to keep someone like Montgomery. But I think if Montgomery becomes too expensive, he's an expendable expense for Detroit
Yeah.
because of how they use Jameer Gibbs, and because I think there's other two down backs like Zach Moss, who's in Cincinnati right now, but is on the last year of his deal, who could fill in for that role next year. If they didn't want to pay Montgomery, or that it becomes a situation where Montgomery and Gibbs start butting heads. You could see the move made there too, because I think Gibbs starts taking more snaps this year. I think it's a lot more passing in the Detroit offense this year. I know Dan Campbell likes the ground and pound, but I think you can't deny what Gibbs did at the end of the year there receiving, and how electrifying he was with the ball in his hands.
Absolutely. Well, that is it for today's episode. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube and LinkedIn as well. Myself and Sean, we are here every Wednesday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time here on Sideline Sports Network. Thank you for tuning in to Sports Business Insider. We will see you all next week for more business talk.